Hi, guys. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this all month.
I know. I'm so glad we get to do this today because I was so bummed when it got postponed before.
I know, especially because I've just been like hyping up you, hyping up the book, hyping up the hour, and then, tech difficulties. I swear to God, I always say writers can't do their jobs without technology. Like we're glued to our laptops, but I've never met a writer who knows how to work a single device, like who doesn't have tech difficulties.
It is that we are definitely controlled by technology, especially now more than ever. I'm just watching everybody trickle in. We're gonna get started really soon, everyone. We'll just make sure that everyone's had a chance to arrive, and we'll kick it off in just a minute.
Yeah. Hi, beautiful friends. Wait, so Carley, how are you doing
Yeah.
today? I saw that you got a really fab haircut, so I know that, but how else?
I got hair color. I have a hairstylist who does the cutting, and then I have a hairstylist who does the color. So I got my color today.
I love how dark it is. It's gorgeous.
Thank you. It's a bit closer to my normal color.
Oh my God.
Yeah. How was your day?
Perfect for fall. My day's good. Busy. I've been sort of running around. Actually, just got back to my apartment. I am moving this week inside New York, so from one borough to another borough. But I'm sure everyone in the chat can relate. Moving really tests every virtue you have. It tests everything.
It is. Yeah, and I can imagine within New York, it's a particular kind of experience. The last time we moved was a year ago, and I was 9 months pregnant, and my husband was in self-isolation. So I was doing all the packing and moving by myself. It was hideous. Well, I think we should we get started soon? I think so. I think
we can get started. Really appreciate you moderating this conversation because if you were not here, I'd probably rant about moving for the entire hour.
Well, let's instead talk about your fabulous book, 100 Other Girls.
Let's do it.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have a really awesome conversation with Iman tonight. She and I will talk for about 30 minutes. And then if you have questions for her, you can just drop them into the chat and we'll take questions for about 15 minutes at the end. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Carley Fortune. This is my first time moderating a Likewise event, or maybe like any virtual event. So keep your fingers crossed for me. And thank you so much for being here. If you haven't heard of me before, I am the author of Every Summer After, which is my debut novel. And it came out earlier this year. It's a New York Times best-selling book. I'm not going to sing my own praises too much for fear of I'm already red with embarrassment. And my second book is called Meet Me at the Lake, and it's coming out in May of next year. And before making the switch to writing full-time, I was a journalist for 16 years. I worked at some of Canada's top publications, including the Globe and Mail, Chatelaine, and Toronto Life. I was most recently the executive editor of Refinery 29 Canada, and I live in Toronto with my husband and our 2 children. And joining me tonight is Iman Hariri-Kia, who is an Iranian-American. She's a New York-based writer, editor, author, activist, and musician. A 2017 recipient of the Annabelle Bonner Medal and a nationally acclaimed journalist, she recently served as the deputy editor of Her Campus, where she was an editorial site lead and expert in all things Gen Z, overseeing content strategy and executing larger brand initiatives. You can also find her work published in Vogue, Teen Vogue, Bustle, Man Repeller, Elite Daily, HuffPost, and other outlets. She is a speaker, panelist, and performer, appearing on The Today Show, Daily Mail TV, CBS, NY1 News, Voice of America, Persian Girl Podcast, The Bustle Huddle, Results May Vary, and the Miss Manhattan Reading, The Lit Salon, and many more. She's hosted no shame sex ed, Bustle's bi-weekly YouTube show, and Old Song Sunday, a weekly open mic series on Instagram stories. Her debut novel, 100 Other Girls, was published by Source Books last month, and you can find her performing songs about those who wronged her in middle school and writing about her personal life on the internet, much to her parents' dismay. Welcome, Iman!
Carly, thank you so much for having me. Now I'm the one blushing. I'm listening to you read this aloud, and I'm like, surely I did not write this by
It is full of accolades. It's glorious.
I have to say that before I have to just tell everyone on this call, I cannot stop saying good enough things about Every Summer After. It was definitely my favorite read of the summer and my favorite debut of the year. So this is just an absolute dream. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you. I've been just so excited to talk to you. I feel like I started following your journey at the same time you kind of found out about me, and I love the book so much. So I'm so excited to talk to you about it. And for everyone who's tuning in, there might be some household noise in the background here. We're trying to keep it to a minimum, but I have 2 small children, so fingers crossed. So Iman, for those who haven't had a chance to read your wonderful debut novel yet, can you give us like a quick overview of what 100 Other Girls is all about?
Yeah, I would love to. The short elevator pitch is that it's sort of an update on the world of The Devil Wears Prada, so the magazine publishing world, but a 2022 check-in on what's happened since the digital boom. But it's very inclusive, and it's from the perspective of different marginalized people. But the longer version is that the book follows our main character, Noura. She's a Middle Eastern American who recently graduated from college, and she's an aspiring writer, but she's feeling pretty lost. She's spending most of her time blogging to a pretty small audience and tutoring rich Upper East Side kids that couldn't care less about her, and sleeping on her sister's couch. But then the opportunity of a lifetime arrives, the chance to work entry level at her favorite culture magazine, Vinyl. And the pages of Noura Vinyl basically raised Noura. They really taught her what it means to be an American teenager. So she feels very, very connected to the publication and thinks that this is going to launch her career as a writer. But when she gets there, she realizes that everything is not exactly as it appears from the outside, and quickly picks up on tension between the old school print team and the new school digital team. And after a few weeks of work, realizes that the two are in a turf war, fighting each other for resources and relevancy and the attention of the higher ups. So with her dream job on the line, she basically has to choose between teams, or she'll have to figure out how to form her own. It is a really fun, funny, you can read it in one night kind of book. It's really colloquially and accessibly written. There is an ill-advised crush on a coworker. There's like a wonderful sister relationship at the heart of the story that I love. But ultimately, I think that this book is a great coming-of-age story for women in their 20s. And if you've ever worked entry level anywhere, had a toxic workplace experience, or had to come to terms with maybe your dream job not exactly being all that dreamy, then I think you'll relate to this book.
I know that I really related to this book, and it was interesting. You know, I've worked in media for 16 years, so I was in a very different place than Noura, who is just kind of like getting just getting her foot in the door. But I thought you did such a wonderful job, both like I think very tenderly, but also sharply looking at the media landscape and why it is so alluring, but also so brutal. And it's, yeah, I just thought you did a tremendous job. It hurt a little bit to read it. Some
I'm
of it was
sorry.
like, oh gosh, yes, that's very, very painful. And I wanted to come back to that idea that you were just talking about, the idea of this book being a coming of age story for people in the early 20s. What do you mean by that? I think that's so intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm someone that's always been really fascinated by the idea that we are always evolving and growing up and becoming new versions of each other. But really, coming of age is popularized with our teenage adolescent years. But I do think that not just women, but all people have multiple coming of ages as they're constantly entering new stages or new eras of their lives. And I really think that when you graduate from college, which is the last finite period of time you're ever given in your life, where you know exactly what you're going to be doing for a 4-year period, you sort of have to reconcile who you are with how you spend your time. You have to renegotiate what your values are, who you keep close to you. Basically, you're growing up all over again. And I really, really love when new adult fiction contends with that sticky sweet spot of knowing who you are and being excited to find out who you will become. So that's how I like to think about it.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense to me. And I just, for anyone who has questions for Iman, just drop them in the chat, or if you have comments, drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of our convo. Okay, so this is what I actually want to talk to you. Like, this is what I personally am very intrigued to talk to you about, because you've worked in media, and and this is your debut novel about media. Where were you coming at in trying to writing this book? Was this like for a way for you to kind of exercise your feelings about the industry? Why this book, I guess, and how did it fit into where you were in your life?
Yeah, no, for sure. First of all, I just want to apologize because I know you said it was painful to read at points, and I've always joked that this book should come with a content warning for anyone who has ever touched media, because it's just it really hits you where you're already bruised. I think, and I've heard from a lot of people that there are certain parts of it that were triggering or a little bit too close to home. But for me personally, this book was very cathartic to write. And my friend Tembe put it perfectly when talking about her own debut novel. I think that this, in many ways, was the only first story I could tell, in its entirety. It was, the narrative that I needed to spill out my guts to before I could feel lighter and ready to explore other stories, because it had been weighing so heavily on me for so long. And I think that I didn't have an agenda when writing this other than exploring what has happened to the industry in the last 20 years, why it's happened, and, who are the survivors and how are they prioritizing their own mental and physical health, the value and integrity of storytelling, as well as connecting with readers and serving readers. So those were my goals going into writing the book. But I pulled very heavily from my own personal experiences, both as an entry-level assistant, an intern, and as like a senior editor, top editor, site lead, with a little bit more of my ear to the ground and my my look behind the curtain. But then I also pulled from the experiences and stories of my friends and coworkers, industry gossip, news stories. And I think the result is that there's a little bit of everything in this book, but it isn't the story of a one media company, one brand, one editor, one writer. It's a story that I think everyone who has touched the industry can see themselves in, which is why I think I have to apologize to people like you and others, because, oh gosh, it's painful when you put so much time and love and energy into a job, and then come out on the other side and have to sort of do a post-mortem, if you will, on those years.
I found it very satisfying. Like, it was like tough, but very satisfying. I think when we go through these like difficult experiences in whatever aspect of our lives, and then find people who are like, when you read stories like this, it's like, oh, it's not just me. And I think one of the things that really stuck with me, it's early in the books, I don't think it's a spoiler, is that there is like a crying closet at Vinyl. And I haven't been, so I wanted to ask you about that. I haven't worked anywhere that I know of anyway where there was a crying closet, but there were certainly places where you would go to cry. And like, in one of my last jobs, we were in a WeWork, and like the WeWork phone booth was like the perfect place to cry. And so, like, yes, I just thought that was such a perfect detail that just summarized exactly how intense these jobs can be. Where did the crying closet come from?
Carley, I am so glad I'm doing this event with you, because I love when people ask me like the tea questions, because there's so many small details in this book that are harrowing and too relatable. The crying closet came from it's an amalgamation of two different things. One is that in one of the first jobs I ever worked in the industry, on my very first day, I was shadowing actually the person who I would be replacing. And it was, I believe, the social editor, who is the kindest person and someone that I'm still in touch with, looked me in the eyes, held my hand, and said to me, you know, it's okay to cry. I want you to know that going into this, I cry every day. Feel comfortable crying. And that was my first day, my first introduction to media, was her saying, you know, if there's one piece of advice I could give you is feel free to cry whenever we all do it. And then the other part of it was that at a different job, there was an infamous, not beauty closet, but supply closet, that whenever you went to get a stapler or papers or whatever you need, a manila folder, you would have to knock, because, you know, 9 times out of 10, there was someone crying in the closet. So from these sort of mixed experiences, the beauty closet and the crying couch and the tissues under the seat were born.
Well, it's like, it is so wonderfully drawn. I feel like I feel like it's a real workplace. Like, I felt like, oh no, I can picture myself at Vinyl perfectly. It's like, it's shocking that this does not exist, but of course it exists in different ways throughout media.
For sure.
And another thing I thought was interesting was how you kind of explored characters of different ages and different generations, really. Like, there's representation, I think, across the board. Like, from, I would say, Loretta, who is the editor-in-chief, she's repping Gen X, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
And then we've got millennials in there, and then Gen Z as well from our protagonists. And I think, like, you were deliberately kind of looking at how we kind of come up throughout these different like generations, like what it means to kind of like rise in a career and how you get there, and also like looking at those tensions, or at least like we hear so much about tension between the generations in the workplace. What is it you were trying to, I guess, say or explore in terms of like generations working together?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you so much, because 100%, I really wanted to sort of create this grading, sort of nails on a chalkboard sensation of all these different generational approaches to work-life balance, coming together and clashing. And I mean, I think what I wanted to say, and I think the big takeaway, I don't think this spoils anything from watching all of these different characters of different generations coming together, is that it's easy to have empathy for every single person because everyone um, is feeling at different times lost or insecure or out of touch. And additionally, no matter which side of the culture war you're on, everyone's being oppressed by the same system, right? Everyone is sort of in a position of power and totally lack of power because at any given time, they could be laid off by a man that doesn't even know your name. You could be your budget could be cut in half, and if you don't rise to the occasion and produce content that's as worthy as it was before, your job could be on the line. We're all, no matter whether you're a 60-year-old heritage editor or a 22-year-old intern, you're still sort of puppets in like this larger systemic issue. I think that's one part of it. But then the other is, I think it's really interesting. And I believe anyone who has worked in any office environment might relate to this, the ways in which different people of different generations approach climbing corporate ladders, and then also hot button issues like feminism. So like an example would be Loretta James, our editor-in-chief, right? She was in in my mind, it doesn't explicitly say this, but based on context, I think that you can sort of grapple with the fact that she was probably one of the first queer women to be an editor-in-chief of a major magazine at Shifter Peers Publishing, which is the sort of fictional old heritage publishing company. And that is a really big deal. But in order for her to get there, she probably had to, separate her personal and her public life as much as possible. She probably had to hide her queerness to some degree. And she probably had to step on the toes of a lot of other people and compete with other women to get to where she is. And she clawed her way to the top. She, in her mind, earned the respect that she is given. Then you have someone like Jade, the digital director, who was a part of a generation who was sort of in the girl boss era of, okay, well, in order for me to assume a position of power, I don't need to destroy other women, but I need to act like a man to sort of take that power for myself and become my own corporate leader, We'll paint the walls millennial pink and all that jazz. And then you have someone like Nora, she's 22. Mm-hmm. She's like the newest recruit of the magazine. And the rest of the digital team, all 20-somethings, diverse and hired because they're diverse and expected to pump out 10 articles a day and be the face of diversity for the company. And they're like, well, instead of fighting each other or acting like men, what if we throw the whole thing in the trash and rewrite the rules? And, they're coming in and they're saying, we deserve to prioritize our mental health by logging off at 6. We deserve, to be paid equitably. Why are we playing by the rules of previous generations when we could just rewrite the rules ourselves? And that makes everyone furious because, there's a lack of cognition there. Why should young people get a free pass when Loretta had to hide who she is for so long and Jade had to become this like emblem of productivity for the company? So there's such an interesting tension that just courses through like the lifeline of the book. And ultimately, I think anyone who has ever gotten into an argument with their parents about what it means to be like a good feminist will find these lines really relatable. Like, how many parents have said, of course, I believe women deserve to be paid, the same as men. And then we'll be like, can you wear a less revealing top? Can you put a sweater over that? I can see your chest. So it's just really, it's fascinating. navigating the differences between white feminism and second wave feminism and intersectional feminism. And yeah, I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope it comes across in the book.
It it absolutely does. I think that is one of like I think it is one of like the kind of most clear themes in the book to me. Like I just like, I was so excited reading this book because it's set in the media world, and I was like, give me all the juiciness. But I thought you did such a good job exploring that. And we usually hear about we see headlines about like generational strife in the workplace and how bosses don't understand Gen Z, and I just like, it's also surface. And I think your book does just such a good job exploring why there are these fault lines and why it is hard for people to kind of empathize with each other. And I think, you said earlier when you were kind of describing your book that it is an update in a way on The Devil Wears Prada, which we all know and love. And I think that is like really explains what part of what was like needed updating from that book. But I also felt another way that like another kind of fresh lens you gave was was New York through your eyes, because it's not the glam New York of The Devil Wears Prada, or what we typically think of when we think of like glamorous editors. And I loved how you painted the city. Can you tell people, and I know you are a New Yorker, can you tell people like, was that part of what you thought needed updating? Like what were you trying to say about New York?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you will understand this so well because you also you wrote about the place you grew up, which I'm sure was so intimate, because I felt that way writing about New York, intimate and nostalgic, and so personally tied to every description. I think that it's so challenging to write a New York novel because it's hard to add something to the conversation about New York that hasn't been already written, because so many incredible writers and authors have captured New York exactly the way that they've experienced it so beautifully. But the way that I see it, I really think that most of the New York novels I've read fall into two different camps. One is the sort of glamorized, the streets are paved with golds, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, Field of Dreams, New York novel. And then there's the dark, gritty, dirty, Gotham City. I'm on the subway in a room filled of people, but I'm actually completely alone, New York novel. And I don't think my novel falls into either camp, because I've never seen New York that way. I really think of New York as a city that owes you nothing, but also takes nothing from you. It is its own living, breathing organism. It is constantly evolving and becoming something new. But when you live here, you're committing to becoming a part of living history, which is so incredible. So I thought the best way to write about the city and the ways in which it changes so fast and so quickly, and the energy that the city both gives and takes from you, was through the perspective of different people who live in the city. So Nora has a sort of anxious habit of people watching, and her voyeurism is a great intro to the different neighborhoods, because every neighborhood in New York has its own culture and community and language and people, and history. So I had a lot of fun writing the people watching scenes, because I think that that's such a wonderful foray into what New York really is, which is a reflection, a symbiotic reflection of its inhabitants. And then the other thing I'll say is that I think that ultimately, in order to create my version of New York, I wanted to world build New York. I wanted to describe New York with the same language that I see fantasy writers creating, dreamscapes of their own. So, there's a lot of really like flourishing descriptions of the different neighborhoods. And it almost feels to me like mythological. Like for me, when I read it, I'm like, oh God, Iman, like stop staring, stop navel gazing, pull your head out of your ass. But I really loved writing that version of New York because, I've lived here my whole life. I was born here, and, every day it's like living in a new city. So, yeah.
Well, it was beautifully done. I so enjoyed those parts of the book where you're describing the city. I thought it was quite gorgeous.
Thank
I
you.
want to ask you about your dedication, which is for my 8-year-old self. We did it, bitch, which I love. I want to know what happened at 8. Why 8 years old?
Yeah. Thank you so much. My family is like, did you have to say bitch? Like, did you have to? Like, yeah, mom. Yes. So I've always known I wanted to be a writer in some capacity. This is truly every moment of this process and this journey, this conversation with you has been part of a waking dream for me. I feel similarly to Nora that writing sort of saved me when I was younger and gave me a sense of direction and purpose. For me, it was not just teen magazines, but YA writing specifically. I was a huge Meg Cabot fan when I was younger, and I really felt like Meg Cabot pulled me out of my isolation and became an older sister and a mentor and a friend. Her MCs, I still go back to them when I'm feeling sad or anxious. And I have always written in a lot of different formats for a very long time. I wanted to be a professional songwriter and a lyricist. I've been interested in poetry, short fiction. This is my first long form fiction project, but obviously I worked as a journalist for many years as well. So when I sat down to write the dedication, I knew that I wanted to, in some ways, pay homage to the version of myself that whenever I wanted to give up, I thought to myself, I'm not going to let her down. Like, I'm doing this for her. Like, whenever people laughed at us when we were like singing our awful songs in free period, like my younger self would be like, we're like, laugh now, laugh it up. Like, we're going to prove them wrong. We're going to do it one day. And so like that memory and the thought of for some reason, like wholehearted, full-bellied belief that they were wrong and I was right. And I would one day actually become a writer. It lit such a fire in me. And then just when I needed it, my mother sent me this clip of me when I was younger. And I really have to shout out my aunt, Mojgan, because she created these time capsules, like documentary, think like The Office style movies of our family every 4 years when I was younger, which is crazy. It's unbelievable. And
wow.
There is an interview, like truly an Office, like mockumentary style interview that she did with me, and I'm 8 years old. And she's, asking me what about subjects I enjoy in school. And I just go on sort of a rant about creative writing and writing in general and how much I enjoy doing it. And then in the next check-in mockumentary style interview, which I suppose I was 13, 14, I tell her same thing. I say, at this point in my life, it's really looking like I'm going to be a realistic fiction writer. So it's like,
yes,
poor anyone that came into contact with me as a kid. I was like I was an adult trapped in a kid's body. Someone should tell me to go play outside. And two, what a wonderful reminder of like why I'm doing this. So I had to write the dedication. I had to do it for her.
I loved it. And what, like, I'm curious as a journalist, did you feel, it's a question that I've had, and I'm curious what your answer is. Like, how do you think your journalism background in particular helped or hindered your like writing and kind of editing of 100 Other Girls?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's such a different muscle. It is such a different muscle and such a different type of writing. And I am in the, I'm in the belief that all different types of writing, prose, poetry, lyric, journalism, essays, like long form, short form fiction, like if you take part in writing different formats, it will sort of inform and strengthen your overall writing. But it is such a different muscle. And I had to remove so many tendencies that I have, like, write strong leads and where's the kicker, and thinking about fact checking. And oh my gosh, like I did not realize how much working as a journalist had sort of, and not just a journalist, as an editor, oh my God, the tendency to want to self-edit while you write, you have to shake it off, because otherwise, Carley, you will never finish the freaking manuscript.
You won't get it.
So wait, I want to flip this on you. How is it different for you writing Every Summer After when you'd gone from writer, journalist, and then executive editor?
Yeah, so I didn't write that much in my journalism career. I did a few features here and there, but I was mostly editing, because I, like you as a child, I was really like creative writing was my first love, but I felt like you couldn't make a living as an author, and I was very concerned about money from a very, very young age. So I went into journalism, not that that's a better decision, but I loved magazines. And so I went into journalism, and there weren't very many staff writer positions at magazines. So that's why I chose the editing path. And so I think the one thing I think I brought, like Every Summer After, I wrote, I set a daily word count that it was very small, and I decided not to edit as I went along. Like I made a conscious decision while I started that I was just going to write.
Yes.
It wasn't going to be perfect, and I would like make it better in the future, because I knew that like we're working with writers, like for many years, you have to have something there in order to improve it. So I feel like I had that. I just was like, no, you're not self-editing until you're done a draft. So,
oh my,
yeah,
I can't tell you how much I relate to that. I tell all aspiring writers, do not let yourself edit as you go. Finish that draft. You have to remove the impulse to write the perfect sentence, then the perfect paragraph, then the perfect chapter. You'll never, ever get it done. But God, especially because I was editing during the day and then writing at night. So to write in the margins of other people's stories all day, like show, don't tell, where's the follow through? Can we say this in a different way? Can you summarize this in a few sentences? And then to come home and be like, okay, shake it off and don't think about what my editor side of my brain would say as I'm writing this. It was definitely, it had its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
Yep.
A big switch. Well, I want to take some questions. I see one question here in the chat. So if anybody has other questions, drop them in. So this first question for you is, what was your path to publication for the book like?
Oh, thank you for this question. Yeah, guys, please ask questions. I don't bite, but if you don't ask questions, I'll just start asking Carley questions.
I'll just ask more.
Yeah, I'll just keep chatting, Carley. But please do. I swear I'll only rant for 20 minutes at a time. Yeah. So the path to publication, for me, I always say I don't think people realize how long it takes to publish a book, especially your first book, and how many people touch the finished product by the time it hits shelves, and also, how many revisions the manuscript goes through. I finished the first draft of my book in late 2019. The process took me about 3 months to finish a full draft. But then the process of getting it published in the version that you guys will hopefully read took about 3 years. So I really, I think I'm lucky in that I didn't have to make a lot of structural changes to the story. So if you were to read, say, the first draft of the book, back then it was called clickbait, and sort of went and did a side-by-side comparison, you'd say, oh, like generally all the plot points are here, but I had a really amazing agent and then editor and then copy editors and sensitivity readers who really helped me to strengthen the character arcs and, really make it a satisfying read for every person and every POV. And no matter who you're rooting for, you'll sort of feel like, oh, I have closure from that person's perspective. So I'm really, really lucky, I think, in the end of the day, because I signed with Carley and I share an agent, and I signed with an agent who really put my neuroses at ease early on, which is no small task. And then an editor who really understood and was ready to go to bat for the book. And I've learned sort of over time from, I like didn't know any authors before this, like knew nothing about publishing, like could not have been more fish out of water. Like I queried the old fashioned way, signed with an agent the old fashioned way, went to submission the old fashioned way. I now that I'm sort of on the other side, so to speak, and have met other authors, I realize that isn't something to take for granted. It is rare. And I just feel so grateful that my agent, was enthusiastic and came into my life when she did. And the editor who read the proposal fully understood what I was aiming to do with the story. And then also that the right readers found the book at the right time. And I feel like, Carley, that really also happened for you, in that the right readers found your book exactly. Your book sort of came out exactly when we needed it. That's how I felt reading Every Summer After. When I read it, I thought, this fell into my lap exactly when I needed this book. So it's...
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I hope so. I mean, you've had such a wonderful trajectory with the book. Like that's such a wonderful experience. And I know there might be even people listening who are querying, which is very, very difficult. And it's all kind of like gut wrenching, and you have to kind of keep at it. And I think what's so impressive about what you've done, like you were working full time too writing this, and like 3 years
Yeah.
is a long time to hold, like these things do not always happen. They usually do not happen quickly, and that's a long time to be not only have written book, but then you're like waiting for it to come out. Like it's quite the journey. So I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Here's a good question. How have the last few weeks as a published author compared to the few weeks leading up to publication? And she's asked if I can talk about this too. So yeah, how has it been? Like the book's been out for a month, almost exactly a month.
Yeah.
And so how has the last month been compared to the month prior to publication?
Oh my gosh. You know what? It's been really surreal to watch it fall into the hands of readers and to finally be able to talk about the book with actual people. I think that has been the biggest change. I think people expect it to be like this euphoric bliss, but the work really continues when the book comes out. Like you celebrate it and you honor it, and you think, oh gosh, like I want to stay as present as possible. But ultimately, you're doing press, you're going to events, you're signing books, you're working on your next project. I had a deadline on August 1st and my book came out on the 26th. So it's terrible timing. So I know, put me in jail. It was honestly like, if I wasn't, people that do this, we're all like masochists. We all like are totally subjecting ourselves to, working 24/7. But I think that it's not necessarily like, oh, I felt this exhale of relief. if anything, I feel like I have been running on adrenaline and vibes only for the past month. And, I'm constantly feel like I am sort of like, I don't know, I'm floating in the air. And at any given time, like I could crash or I could just start like flying to the side. It's just like, it's the strangest experience because I'm constantly fielding news. I'm constantly sort of, I feel like my my attention span has gotten just so small because I'm doing so many things at once.
Oh,
but yeah, I mean, I just feel very grateful that I get to meet and talk to the people who have engaged with my work, and thank them. I think it's the coolest part of the job, I think, is the readers. And yeah, it's scary. It's vulnerable. It's emotional. Can you imagine caring so much and working so much on one thing for 3 years? And as Carley said, like while working 2 other jobs, and then all of a sudden you just hand it over and you're like, okay, let me know what you think, everyone I've ever met in my life. So it's scary, it's emotional, and it's vulnerable. Okay, Carley, your turn.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I felt like, so my book came out May 10th, and before it, so it felt so like the lead up to publication felt so slow, especially the month before. And I'm such a like put me in there, let me help. And there's really not much of anything you can do. And the people who followed me on social media, for example, know me not as an author back then, and so they're probably very sick of me talking about this book that nobody has read. And so I felt very anxious, and I was also just full of terror that nobody would read it, because I loved writing every summer after so much, and it felt like I'd found the thing I was meant to be doing. And I was just so afraid that like nobody would read it, and I would never be able to write full time, and like that's like the dream for me. And so it's been honestly such a relief for me that the book is out in the world and people have been reading it and, by and large enjoying it. And it's just been positive news after positive news. And I think the book really kind of picked up a few weeks after publication, and it just seemed to explode on social media, and that was really fun to see. And then it's become like a bit overwhelming, like I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna need to kind of huddle down when I start my third book. But it's been so wonderful. It really is just surreal for me. Like I look out the window with my mouth open all the time, saying like, what is going on? But I'm so grateful for all the people who have talked about the book and shared about the book, yourself included. You've been such a wonderful supporter of me from before publication.
I love this book. I love it. Like, guys, I mean, you guys have probably read Every Summer After, but I think that so few people capture being a prepubescent, preteen, as well as Carley does. Like, the diary entries and the stupid fights with friends who you both want their undying loyalty and respect, but you also feel jealous and envious and all these emotions. And oh my gosh, I truly, reading it, I thought to myself, no, it's impossible to capture these years on the page because it's a feeling, not a description. But your characters were able to evoke those feelings in me all over again. So that's why I love the book so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I so appreciate that. Okay, I have one last question here, and then we will say farewell. And this is a wonderful question. So it is, Iman, I started to follow you the day you left your job. With moving, life is hectic. How do you stay on task and get your work done? Are you a procrastinator that thrives under pressure, or are you super organized?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you for following me the day I left my job.
Yes, thank you, fan.
Similarly to Carley, writing full time has always been my dream, and I have been very scared that I would, regret the decision. So thank you for your support. I can't do it without you. So thank you. I have the most boring answer to this question, and it bums me out because I almost want to like lie and say that I am the most exciting, exhilarating person. Like every day I choose my own adventure. But the truth is, I wouldn't get anything done without being sort of like hyper organized. I'm a big to-do list, checker offer, spreadsheet with deadlines, notes app wake up at 2 a.m. and write stuff in the notes app kind of girl. And I think that, right now, as I mentioned, I'm moving. I just got back from the first leg of the tour. I turned in another project waiting on revisions. I'm writing another project, and I am promoting the current one. And I think back to the 3 years that I was editing full time, like writing part time and working on the book. And I'm just like, how did I think I was going to be able to do this all? And, how I have so much respect for people who are able to manage all the different threads in their lives, because I feel like right now I'm constantly I'm playing Jenga, and any point like one piece will remove and I'll probably like cry for no reason, which I do. I cry all the time, and people are like, "Are you okay?" And I have to say, "Yeah, I'm feeling way too much all the time." But ultimately, I couldn't write the book without giving myself a set schedule, a word count I had to hit every day or every week, and making sure I stick to it, and telling myself, like, you are your own boss and you will put yourself on a pip. Like if you don't meet that goal. Otherwise, I truly, nothing would get done because there's too much stuff all at once. And then I'll say conversely, the only other thing that I really recommend to anyone who also is sort of juggling a lot, and I'm so privileged in that I think about this all the time. Carley, you have children. I don't have dependents. I don't know what I would do if I even had a dog right now. Because I really have to prioritize taking care of myself. And I think that the only thing I would recommend is trying to carve out like an hour a day at least for yourself, to make sure you go outside, either walk around the block, or I like to go to my roof for an hour a day because it's nice out, and just be outside and listen to the gorgeous natural sounds of cars honking. If I don't do it, or if I don't have like a trigger in my brain that says day over, we're transitioning to nighttime writing, like seeing a friend or talking to my family, or cooking dinner or doing a yoga class, then I will burn out. It's all about pacing myself, not letting myself do it all at once, not trying to work through meals or take as few breaks as possible so I finish faster. This is so cliche, but it really is a marathon and not a sprint. Although, to be honest with you, I haven't run a sprint or a marathon, so I don't even know what that saying really means in the end. So,
No, I think that is so wise. And I think it's kind of hard to start thinking, at least like for me, I find like when I have some downtime, I'm very itchy, because I think coming from media, especially if you
yes,
work in digital media or newspapers, you are used to doing so much work at such a high caliber very quickly. And then you're also used to just like punishing workload. So it's very easy. It's very tempting to want to be a mean boss to yourself, I find. And so I think what you're saying about, you're trying to build a life that is sustainable for yourself. And that is so wonderful.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Gosh, Carley, I hope that point comes across in the book too, is just how much people who work in digital media are constantly working, because, the whole idea that's being pumped into your head is we need to beat our competitors to content. Our content has to be stronger. It needs to be better optimized. It needs to be better written, and it needs to go more viral. Like, that's just the constant thought process is, how much can I publish, and how quickly can I do it? And so think about, everyone on this, I was about to call it a call, but everyone in this event, think about how much you feel you're flooded with Apple News notifications and Twitter threads. And then imagine if every time news broke, your first thought was, oh, I have to drop everything and cover this. That's the school of thought, I think, that anyone who has been working in digital journalism for the past few years is coming from. So, when I quit my job, my first thought was, oh God, if I have too much free time, it's going to kill me. Like, I can't sit still with my thoughts. And what I've learned since then is two things. One, you have to learn to be okay with a little bit of wiggle room and silence and things changing. And, you have to give yourself grace and space for all of that good stuff. And then the other thing is that when you are your own manager, the tendency isn't to take on too little. It's to say yes to everything, because you want to give yourself every opportunity to grow at the company that is your own head. So the thing that you have to manage is your own expectations and setting boundaries and saying, well, I have too much going on this week. I have to do this next week. Or it's 7 p.m. and you have had a nectarine, time to make sure you eat and pee and exercise and etc. So yeah, it's funny. It's funny how different the reality of going freelance is from, I think, a lot of people's expectation of it, which is that, you're going to feel limitless. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true, and such a good note to leave it on. Learning how to give yourself space and 100%. Grace. Brilliant.
Wait, person in the chat, don't tell your daughter to change her major. We need young journalists. We need people to write honestly and acutely and tell their stories. I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm like poo-pooing all over journalism and writing, but the truth is, I would never, ever tell someone not to become a writer or tell them not to explore what it means to tell a story that resonates with even one person and then can sort of inspire them to enact some kind of change. Like, what I am critiquing, I swear to God, is just the industry and the system and the expectations that all these companies have of their employees, but never the writing and never the readers. And I promise that the industry is probably going to change while your daughter is working in it, and she can be a part of that change. And how exciting to be a part of something so extraordinary.
It will change 5 times over while she is in school. Exactly, for sure. Okay, well, thank you so much, Iman, for chatting with us all this evening. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, guys, so much. Carley, thank you. I'm kind of mad because I didn't get a chance to ask you about Meet Me at the Lake, and I really want, even the smallest spoiler you can give us. But I am so excited to read your next book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm excited too. We're just finishing up the cover. So I'm excited to share that hopefully soon.
Soon. Are the vibes similar to Every Summer After? Can you tell us that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think they're kind of similar, the vibes. For sure. Yeah, it's lakey.
Oh, okay.
I'll say that.
The cover is lakey.
Yeah.
Okay. There's something in my head. Yeah. I'm excited to see if it'll come to fruition.
Yeah, but hopefully it's not too, I think it's of a piece, but different. It has a different tone, I would say. And I think the book has a bit of a different tone too.
That's so exciting. Oh my gosh.
And yes, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you likewise for hosting us. We've had such fun tonight. It's been a delight.
So much fun. Thank you, guys. Thank you to everyone who's been listening in. This has been too much fun, honestly. I've got so much energy. I need to run around my apartment 5 times. And thank you, likewise. I'm so glad we could make this event happen. It was truly worth the wait. So have a good night, guys.
Agreed. Good night.
Bye.